So, for anyone who's socially aware and is noticing what's going on around the world, it's pretty axiomatic to say that capitalism is failing. The debt's piling up all across the world, bankruptcies happen all the time, the gap between the rich and the poor is continuing to widen. Environmentally, our society or our civilization is destabilizing. Socially, our civilization is destabilizing. And what's happening is capitalism is failing. That's what's happening. Now, why is that happening? Why is capitalism failing? Well, there's a couple reasons for that. At the root, it's the competitive-minded, gaining advantage over others, self-preservation, self-interest-driven ethic. That's what's at the root of this, because you have people in power who they don't want to give up their power. They're focused on short-term gain as opposed to the long-term benefit of society. But there's really two things in particular that are compounding the problem substantially, and that is cyclical consumption and inefficiency. So back before the Great Depression and World War II, America and really the world at large was more of an agrarian, puritanical society. We didn't have all the myriad of media and consumerism and everything that exists today that is really a huge problem. So what happened? Was it a natural evolution? Did we just become these consuming vultures that wanted more and more stuff and needed to have more ornament and materialistic things? The answer is no. That's not part of our human nature. Now, it is true to say that we are consumers to some degree. We need to eat, we need to drink, we need energy. There's certain amenities in our life we need: house, bed, clothes. So to some degree that's true. But the inherent materialism in our society today, that is a value that was created by advertisement. Back when the economy was failing, right around the Great Depression. Why did the Great Depression even happen? It was due to technological unemployment. Now, fraudulent banking practices did have something to do with it. However, it was really the advance in technological efficiency that led to technological unemployment and the production of more and more goods, so much so that we couldn't consume it at a fast enough rate. So the leaders and the people in power at the time, they said, you know what? We need to get into people's heads and we need to change their values. We need to make it so the American way is equated with consumerism and wanting more and more stuff. Now, they didn't exactly say it like that, but that's basically what happened. So through advertisement in the 40s and 50s, 60s, they threw out all this stuff equating your social status with how much stuff you had and how rich you were. And this eventually came to encompass the entire society. And it has reached the point that it does now, and advertising continues, obviously. But I mean, you look at Black Friday and just all the neurotic materialism that goes on in that 7 or 8 hour span. It really is telling of what advertisement has done to people's values. However, in reality, this type of distortion was needed in order for capitalism to continue, because it was failing in the past. The value was created to consume more. That kept the economy going. Now, why is this a problem? Well, there's a couple main reasons. One is, like I said before, it distorts our values. That's not who we are. We're supposed to consume the things we need and then be satisfied with that and enjoy our lives. But this culture has taught us to not be satisfied with anything. We always need more and more and more and more and more. No satisfaction. And that is a problem that socially it's robbed our culture here in America and other cultures throughout the world. The other problem, which is much bigger in its long-term effects, is we live on a finite planet. How are we going to continue to consume when we don't have an unlimited number of resources? We can't have people buying jets and cars and just continually buying all this stuff, because we are using up our resources and we are getting perilously close to that. We are overshooting our resource use by 4 or 5 months, and we've been doing that since the 70s. If it continues, by 2050 we'll need 27 Urs to meet demands. And that is a fact. So that leads me to the other thing that is adding to this problem of our economic system, and that is inefficiency. So back in the 1920s and 30s again, the light bulb companies throughout the world, they were beginning to produce light bulbs that would last 2,500 hours or more. And what was happening is people were buying them, and they didn't need to buy anymore because the light bulbs were that efficient. So the light bulb companies' profits were dropping substantially. So they all collaborated throughout the world, and they came up with this plan to make their light bulbs less efficient. They wanted to cut the max at 1,000 hours of light. And that's what they did. It's called the Phoebus light bulb conspiracy. I'll post something below if you want to read more into it. But this started a trend that is commonplace in business today, and that's called planned obsolescence. Basically, they make their product so it is not as efficient as it could be because this system requires turnover. It's all about servicing and repairing things and buying more things. If we really wanted to apply efficiencies, then the industries would go out of business. Take cars, for example. If we put a battery in a car that was solar powered, needed maintenance once every 2 or 3 years, then we wouldn't need gas stations, we wouldn't have... the entire energy industry would be shattered. Or if Apple decided to make the most efficient phone possible, one that didn't need to be replaced or really repaired all that much in, say, 5 to 10 years. Well, Apple would be out of business like that. So this system requires inefficiency. And we couldn't see this in the past because we didn't have the technological capabilities to see it. Now that we do, these problems that are inherent to market capitalism and really a competitive-driven economy in general, they are coming to the surface. We are seeing them, and they are greatly restricting progress in society. To use one more example, think about food production. We have these things called vertical farms, and they use hydroponics, aeroponics, different nutrient extraction processes where we could grow an abundant amount of food all over the world for everyone to have. But I mean, you look around and there's people that literally don't get their basic needs met. Literally thousands and thousands of people who die every day because they don't have enough food or they don't have enough water. You know why? It's because in the South, there's a huge industry in food production. And if we were to create an abundant amount of food, and that industry would be completely obsolete. So after having said all this, the main point I want to get across is we have an economy right now that is driven by cyclical consumption, using more resources than we have at the end of the day, and inefficiency, stifling human progress in order to keep the social system relevant. And these are the two things that have developed out of this competitive-driven, self-interest-driven, self-preserving market economy. And a good way to put it would be the contradiction of capitalism. That was a phrase coined by Karl Marx, and basically it is our technology is advancing so rapidly and is becoming so efficient that we can't create enough labor roles to keep up with the jobs that are being automated, and eventually this system will collapse. Now the collapse is going to be ugly. There's environmental destabilization, social destabilization, the debt's building up, bankruptcies are getting worse, unemployment's rising. And really what we need to do as a species is recognize this problem and understand the imperative necessity to move on from our competitive-driven economy to a more collaborative one. Now I will say that in the past, everything that happened was inevitable. We couldn't have changed things back then. All the wars that were fought, all the exploitation, that was the result of a scarce world. However, today we have the technological capabilities to calculate society and create an abundance for everyone. We can organize things in a way where it is done as efficiently as possible, everyone has their needs met, and most of the problems we see today become completely inapplicable. It was Charles Darwin who coined the term survival of the fittest. Now, what most people think he meant by that is we compete amongst each other and the strong comes out on top. But what he really meant, and he reiterated this many times, but it didn't get through to people, was that it is the fittest strategy of survival. So that could be collaborative as much as it could be competitive. And in the world today, we need that collaboration. It is essential if we are to survive. And I have a lot of faith in the human species. We have shown in the past that we can adapt when necessary. This is just another one of those periods where we must adapt to our environment. It starts with education, and as our civilization continues to become more destabilized, and as our economic system continues to collapse, the recognition for dire, large-scale social change will become more and more widespread and understood on the real.